There are moments when your entire world shatters with the clarity of breaking glass, when everything you believed about love and loyalty reveals itself as nothing more than beautiful lies. For Arya Chen, that moment came dressed in ivory silk and grandmother's pearls, surrounded by 200 guests who had gathered to witness what should have been the happiest day of her life. She stands frozen at the altar, her bouquet of white roses trembling in her hands as she watches her fiancé Marcus kiss her maid of honor with desperate hunger. Not a stolen moment of weakness, but a claiming kiss that speaks of months of deception. The woman in his arms isn't some stranger, some temporary temptation. Sarah. Her sister. Her blood. Chapel falls into stunned silence, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder as storm clouds gather overhead. Arya's heart pounds against her ribs like a caged animal, each beat echoing the truth she's been too blind to see. The late-night phone calls Marcus claimed were work. Sarah's guilty glances across family dinners. The way they moved around each other with practiced ease, like lovers who had learned each other's rhythms. "Arya, I can explain," Marcus says, his voice carrying across the chapel like a death knell. But explanation isn't what her soul craves. It's escape. It's the wild freedom calling from the storm-darkened forest beyond the chapel doors, where something ancient and untamed recognizes her pain and offers her a different kind of destiny entirely. 3 months after the wedding that never was, Arya Chen has perfected the art of being invisible. She moves through the halls of Crescent Falls Elementary like a ghost, her footsteps silent on polished linoleum as she passes clusters of whispering teachers who still feast on the scandal of her public humiliation. Can you imagine just running off like that? Patricia Summers murmurs to the kindergarten aide. Marcus says she had some kind of breakdown. Poor thing was never quite right, was she? Arya's fingers tighten around her lesson plans, but she doesn't slow her pace. Better to remain the mysterious figure they can whisper about than the broken woman they can pity to her face. Her third-grade classroom has become her sanctuary, the only place where her reputation doesn't precede her like a scarlet letter. Children don't care about wedding scandals or family betrayals. They care that she reads stories with different voices for each character and that she never makes them feel small for not knowing an answer. "Miss Chen, why do wolves howl at the moon?" asks Emma Rodriguez, a bright-eyed 8-year-old with paint-stained fingers. The question catches Arya off guard, sending an unexpected shiver down her spine. She's been having strange dreams lately, dreams filled with moonlight and distant howling that makes her heart race with something that isn't quite fear. "Well," she says, settling onto the edge of her desk, "some people think they're calling to their pack, letting them know where they are. Others believe they're singing their stories to the night sky. Do you think they're lonely?" Emma asks with the devastating directness only children possess. The word hits Arya like a physical blow. Lonely. Yes, she supposes the wolves must be lonely, just like she is. She's always felt like an outsider looking in through windows at lives that seemed more real than her own. Growing up, she was too restless for her mild-mannered parents, too intense for her placid younger sister Sarah. Her engagement to Marcus had been an attempt at normalcy, a chance to prove she could fit into the life everyone expected her to want. Instead, it had revealed the truth she'd been running from her whole life. She didn't belong in their world of dinner parties and careful conversations. She was something else entirely, something that made people uncomfortable even when they couldn't quite articulate why. The final bell rings, jolting her from her reverie. As students file out, Emma lingers by Arya's desk. "Miss Chen? I think the wolves howl because they're looking for home," the little girl says with startling wisdom. "My mom says sometimes we have to make our own noise to find where we belong." After Emma leaves, Arya sits alone in her empty classroom, feeling the weight of the child's words settle into her bones. By the time she locks her classroom door, the sun has begun its descent behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The autumn air carries the scent of wood smoke and dying leaves, and something deeper, wilder, that makes her pulse quicken with anticipation she can't explain. Her apartment waits for her like a tomb, all beige walls and neutral furniture chosen for their inoffensiveness rather than any reflection of her personality. The silence presses against her from all sides as she microwaves leftover pasta and grades papers. Outside her window, the forest that borders Crescent Falls stretches into purple shadows, and she finds herself staring into its depths with a longing that makes her chest ache. This is her life now. This careful, colorless existence where she teaches other people's children about adventures they'll never have, where she goes to bed each night feeling like she's slowly disappearing into the beige walls of her own making. But as darkness settles over the town and the first stars appear between the branches of ancient pines, Arya feels the familiar stirring in her blood, the call of something vast and unnamed that waits beyond the safety of streetlights and suburban lawns. She laces up her running shoes, pulls on a jacket against the mountain chill, and steps out into the night. Tonight, like every night for the past month, she'll run until her lungs burn and her legs shake, until the wildness in her blood finds some small measure of peace. And if she runs a little farther than she should, if she ventures deeper into territory that doesn't quite belong to the human world, well, what harm could come from a schoolteacher seeking solace among the trees? The trail that has become Arya's nightly refuge winds deeper into the forest than she's ever ventured before, beckoned forward by something she can't name but feels in every cell of her body. Tonight, the restlessness clawing at her chest won't be satisfied by her usual circuit along the tree line. Tonight, something calls to her from the heart of the wilderness, a pull as undeniable as gravity. The moon hangs like a silver coin above the canopy, casting everything in ethereal light and shadow. Arya has always been comfortable in darkness, drawn to the liminal spaces between day and night where the ordinary world loosens its grip and anything seems possible. But tonight, the forest feels different, charged with an energy that makes her skin prickle with awareness. She runs for what feels like hours, following switchbacks that climb steadily higher into the mountains. Her legs burn with exertion, her heart pounds against her ribs, but she doesn't slow. The wildness in her blood sings with each stride, finally finding expression in movement and muscle and the primal rhythm of pursuit. Or perhaps, she realizes with a flutter of unease, she's the one being pursued. The thought should terrify her, send her fleeing back towards safety. Instead, it fills her with a thrill that borders on euphoria. Something about the possibility of being hunted awakens instincts she never knew she possessed, makes her hyper-aware of every sound, every shift in the wind, every shadow that might conceal a predator. When she finally stops to catch her breath, the silence that surrounds her is complete and profound. She's ventured farther from town than ever before, following trails that seem to exist for creatures other than humans. The realization should alarm her, but instead it feels like coming home. She leans against the rough bark of an enormous pine, pressing her palm to her racing heart as she tries to orient herself. The trail she followed branches in 3 directions, each path disappearing into darkness that seems to breathe with its own life. A rational person would turn back now, retrace their steps to safety while they still could. But Arya has never been rational, especially not since Marcus's betrayal stripped away her illusions about the predictable life she thought she wanted. She chooses the middle path, drawn by an intuition that operates below the level of conscious thought. The trees press closer here, their branches forming a canopy so thick that moonlight filters through in silver coins scattered across the forest floor. The air grows cooler, carrying scents she can't identify but that makes something deep in her chest respond with recognition. Pine and earth, yes, but underneath those familiar notes lurks something wild and masculine and dangerous. She's so focused on the intoxicating new scents that she almost misses the sound that makes every nerve in her body fire at once. The soft crack of a twig breaking under tremendous weight. The whisper of massive paws padding across fallen leaves with predatory grace. Arya freezes, every instinct suddenly screaming that she's no longer alone. She turns slowly, scanning the darkness between the trees for any sign of movement. For long moments, nothing stirs except the wind sighing through the branches. Then, at the very edge of her peripheral vision, she catches a glimpse of something that makes her breath catch in her throat. Golden eyes watch her from the shadows, glowing with an intelligence that sends ice through her veins. Not the simple awareness of a wild animal, but something far more complex and infinitely more dangerous. The eyes hold her gaze with hypnotic intensity, and she finds herself unable to look away, unable to move, unable to breathe. Creature steps into a shaft of moonlight, and Arya's world tilts on its axis. The wolf is massive, easily twice the size of any wild wolf she's ever seen in nature documentaries. His coat is midnight black with silver threading through like starlight, and when he moves, it's with a fluid grace that speaks of power held carefully in check. But it's his eyes that steal her breath, golden and ancient and far too knowing for any animal. They stand frozen in a tableau that feels carved from myth and moonlight, predator and prey locked in a moment of mutual recognition that transcends the boundaries between species. Arya should run, should scream, should do anything other than stare into those hypnotic golden depths. Instead, she feels something deep in her chest respond to his presence, a resonance that vibrates through her bones like the memory of a song she's never heard but somehow knows by heart. The wolf tilts his massive head, studying her with an intensity that makes her feel simultaneously exposed and cherished. When he takes a step closer, she doesn't retreat. When he takes another, closing the distance between them to mere yards, her heart pounds not with fear but with anticipation. For a breathless eternity, they simply observe each other across the moonlit clearing. The sound breaks the spell. Reality crashes back over Arya in a wave of vertigo and terror. She's alone in the wilderness with a predator that could kill her without effort, and she's been standing here like some fairy tale heroine waiting to be devoured. She takes a stumbling step backward, then another, never taking her gaze off the wolf. He doesn't follow, doesn't move at all except for the subtle shift of his head as he tracks her retreat. When she finally tears her eyes away and turns to flee, her last glimpse is of him standing motionless in the moonlight like a dark god surveying his domain. Arya runs harder than she's ever run in her life, crashing through underbrush and leaping over fallen logs with desperate grace. Every shadow could conceal pursuit, every rustle of leaves might herald her death. But when she finally emerges from the forest onto the familiar streets of Crescent Falls, gasping and wild-eyed and trembling with adrenaline, she realizes the wolf never followed her. Instead, he let her go, and somehow that knowledge is more unsettling than if he had given chase. She stumbles to her apartment on shaking legs, locks the door behind her, and collapses against it with her heart still hammering against her ribs. But even as terror and rationality battle for control of her thoughts, one truth burns bright and undeniable in her chest. She's never felt more alive than she did staring into those golden eyes, and despite every logical reason to stay far away from the forest, she knows with bone-deep certainty that she'll return tomorrow night. The wolf is waiting for her there, and something about that promise fills her with excitement that eclipses her fear. Cale Thorne has ruled the Northern Ridge Pack for 15 years with the kind of unwavering authority that comes from being born to command. 34, he stands 6 feet 4 inches of pure predatory power, his human form as intimidating as his wolf. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples, golden eyes that miss nothing, and a presence that makes even the strongest wolves lower their gaze in submission. He is alpha in every sense of the word, and he has never questioned the absolute control he wields over his territory and his people. Until tonight. Pack House sits nestled in a valley 20 miles deep in the Cascade Wilderness, hidden from human eyes by ancient magic and careful planning. Tonight, the Great Hall buzzes with tension as Pack members gather for the monthly council meeting, their voices carrying the weight of decisions that will shape their future. Cale stands at the head of the massive oak table his grandfather carved by hand, listening to reports from his lieutenants with only half his attention. Border patrols report no human incursions. The hunting grounds remain pristine and well-stocked. 3 new cubs were born this month. All the mundane details of pack leadership that used to consume his every waking moment now feel distant and unimportant, because her scent still clings to his fur. Even in human form, hours after his encounter with the woman in the moonlit clearing, Cale can taste her on the air he breathes. Rain and wildflowers and something uniquely, intoxicatingly her. The memory of those dark eyes meeting his across the space between predator and prey plays on an endless loop in his mind, accompanied by the echo of recognition that hit him like lightning to the chest. Mate. The word pulses through his consciousness with the rhythm of his heartbeat. After 34 years of believing he was destined to rule alone, after decades of political maneuvering and careful breeding considerations, his wolf had taken one look at a human woman and claimed her with absolute certainty. The problem is that claiming her would destroy everything he's built. Alpha. Elena Moonwhisper's voice cuts through his distraction. The pack's elder and lorekeeper watches him with knowing gray eyes that have seen too much over her 80 years of life. You seem troubled tonight. Kale straightens, forcing his attention back to the matters at hand. Around the table, his council waits with the patience of apex predators, but he can sense their curiosity. An alpha's emotional state affects the entire pack through bonds forged in blood and magic. Marcus, he says, turning to his beta. Report on the southern border. Marcus clears his throat, consulting his leather-bound journal. No human activity beyond the usual hiking trails. The new housing development in Crescent Falls is still 3 miles from our outermost markers. Crescent Falls. The name sends another spike of awareness through Kale's system. She lives there, in that small human town nestled at the base of their mountain territory. He knows this with the same bone-deep certainty that tells him when storms are coming or when rival packs cross into his lands. What about the Black Fong pack? Asks Sarah Ironwood, his head of intelligence. Any movement from Victor's people? The mention of Victor Blackfong and his daughter Lydia brings Kale back to the political realities that govern his life. For months, the Pack Council has been pressuring him to formalize an alliance with the Blackfong pack through marriage. Lydia is beautiful, powerful, from impeccable bloodlines. She would make a perfect Luna, strengthening both packs and ensuring the survival of their way of life. The thought of Lydia's touch, of anyone's touch except the woman with wildflower scent and fearless dark eyes, makes his skin crawl. No unusual activity, Sarah continues. Though Lydia sent another formal invitation to the Harvest Moon celebration next week. Murmurs of approval ripple around the table. Victor controls territory stretching from the Canadian border to the Columbia River, and his pack numbers over 300 strong. A union between their bloodlines would create the most powerful supernatural force on the West Coast. The Blackfangs have honored our borders for 50 years, says Thomas Greywolf, the eldest council member. Victor's proposal makes strategic sense, Alpha. Our numbers dwindle while human expansion threatens our hunting grounds. We need allies, not enemies. Kale nods, though every word feels like broken glass in his throat. Everything Thomas says is true. A political marriage to secure his pack's future is exactly what a good alpha would do. But the woman in the forest has changed everything. The meeting continues around him, voices discussing patrol schedules and territory markers and the delicate balance of hiding an entire supernatural society within the shadow of human civilization. Kale participates when required, makes decisions when asked, but his mind keeps drifting to golden moonlight and the sound of her breath catching when she first saw him. He's hunted these mountains for over 2 decades, knows every trail and stream and hidden valley. But tonight, following her scent through the forest felt like exploring uncharted territory. She'd run deeper into his lands than any human had ventured in years, drawn by something she couldn't possibly understand. When he'd first caught wind of her presence, his immediate instinct was to intercept the trespasser. Instead, he'd found himself following at a distance, intoxicated by the way she moved through his domain with unconscious grace. There was something different about her, something that called to his wolf on a frequency he'd never experienced. Not just her scent, though that alone was enough to drive him to distraction. It was the way she ran like she was born for it, the fearlessness that kept her moving deeper into territory that should have terrified any sane human. And when she'd finally stopped to rest, when he'd allowed himself to step into her line of sight, the recognition in her eyes had confirmed what his wolf already knew. She belonged to him, and he to her, in ways that transcended pack law and political necessity. Problem is that pack law exists for good reason. For over 1,000 years, their kind has maintained strict separation from humans. Interbreeding is forbidden, contact is limited, and exposure means death for the human and exile for the shifter. These laws have kept them alive through centuries of persecution and near extinction. But laws written by ancient wolves who never experienced the soul-deep certainty of finding their true mate feel suddenly negotiable when faced with the alternative of living without her. Council meeting finally ends near midnight, pack members dispersing to their homes and duties. Elena lingers as the great hall empties, her gray eyes fixed on Kale with uncomfortable intensity. "You met her tonight," she says. Not a question, but a statement delivered with the confidence of someone who has learned to read the signs of fate working its will. Kale doesn't bother denying it. Elena's gifts as a lore keeper extend beyond simple knowledge of pack history. She sees patterns in the supernatural world that escape others, connections between past and future that exist outside normal understanding of time. "She's human," he says, the words heavy with everything that implies. Elena nods, settling into the chair beside his. Despite her advanced age, she moves with the fluid grace of someone who has never forgotten her wolf form. The moon doesn't ask permission before she calls the tides, Alpha. Neither do mate bonds. The simple acceptance in her voice is more unsettling than outright condemnation would be. Kale had expected lectures about pack law and political necessity. Instead, Elena speaks as if his attraction to a forbidden human woman is as natural and inevitable as sunrise. "It would destroy everything," he says, voicing the fear that has haunted him since the moment their eyes met. The council would never accept a human Luna. The alliance with the Black Fangs would be finished. Victor might declare war over the insult to his daughter. "Yes," Elena agrees with maddening calm. "Those things might happen. Or they might not. The future is never as fixed as we imagine, especially when true mates are involved." She rises from her chair, gathering the leather satchel that contains her most precious books and scrolls. At the doorway, she pauses and looks back at him with something that might be pity or compassion or simple understanding of the impossible choice he faces. "The question isn't what the pack needs, Alpha. The question is whether you can live with yourself if you let fear make your choices for you." After she leaves, Kale sits alone in the great hall, surrounded by the weight of 15 years of leadership and the expectations of nearly 200 wolves who depend on him for their survival. Side, his territory stretches for hundreds of square miles of pristine wilderness, a sanctuary carved from the modern world through generations of careful planning and ruthless protection. But all he can think about is the woman who ran through his forest like she was coming home, whose scent still clings to his memories like a promise he's not sure he's strong enough to keep or wise enough to break. Tomorrow, he tells himself. Tomorrow he'll return to the political realities of pack leadership and marriage negotiations. Tomorrow he'll be the alpha his people need him to be. Tonight, though, he'll allow himself to remember the way her breath caught when she first saw him, and to imagine what might be possible in a world where love mattered more than law. Sleep, when it finally comes to Arya, brings no peace. Her dreams unfold in vivid tapestries of moonlight and shadow, filled with sensations so intense they blur the line between sleeping and waking. She runs through endless forests on legs that feel stronger than they should, her bare feet finding purchase on moss-covered stones with impossible grace. The night air fills her lungs with flavors she can taste as much as breathe, pine resin and wild honey, the metallic tang of approaching rain, and underneath it all, something wild and masculine that makes her heart race with anticipation. In these dreams, she is the hunter as much as the hunted. Something pursues her through the moonlit wilderness, something massive and powerful whose presence she feels like heat against her back. But instead of terror, the chase fills her with exhilaration. She wants to be caught, wants to turn and face whatever stalks her through the silver-dappled darkness. When she finally stops running and turns to meet her pursuer, golden eyes emerge from the shadows. Not the wolf from the clearing, but a man whose face remains frustratingly obscured by shifting moonlight. She can see the powerful line of his shoulders, the predatory grace in the way he moves, but his features dance just beyond the edge of recognition. All except those eyes, burning with an intensity that makes her feel exposed and cherished in equal measure. He approaches her slowly, like she's a wild thing that might bolt at any sudden movement. When he speaks, his voice carries the rumble of distant thunder, words she understands. Without hearing, "You belong to me," he tells her without speaking. "You have always belonged to me." Instead of rejecting this claim, she finds herself stepping closer, drawn by forces she can't name or resist. His hands, when they finally touch her, burn like brands against her skin. She should pull away, should demand explanations and reassurances. Instead, she melts into his touch, allowing him to pull her against the solid wall of his chest. In her dreams, surrender tastes like freedom. She wakes gasping, her heart hammering against her ribs and her skin slick with perspiration. The phantom sensation of strong hands on her body lingers for long moments, so vivid she has to look around her empty bedroom to confirm she's alone. The digital clock beside her bed glows 3:17 in the morning, but she knows sleep won't return. Not when her body hums with energy that feels too big for her human frame to contain. The dreams have been coming every night since her encounter in the forest, each one more intense than the last. During the day, she tells herself they're nothing more than her subconscious processing the shock of seeing a wolf up close. But in the deep watches of the night, when rational explanations hold no power against the memory of golden eyes and phantom touches, she knows there's something more. Something is changing inside her, awakening in response to that moment of connection across a moonlit clearing. The changes start small, a heightened sensitivity to sounds and scents that would have escaped her notice before. She can hear conversations through classroom walls that should be impossible to penetrate. Cafeteria's industrial-strength disinfectant makes her gag with its chemical sharpness. Her students notice the difference without being able to articulate what's changed. They gather around her desk during recess like moths drawn to flame, seeking her attention with urgency that borders on desperate. Emma Rodriguez clings to Aria's hand during story time and refuses to let go even when the bell rings. "You smell different, Miss Chen," Emma announces with a devastating honesty of childhood. "Like the woods after it rains." "I like it." Comment sends ice through Aria's veins. If an 8-year-old can detect changes in her scent, what else might be shifting beneath the surface of her carefully controlled life? She excuses herself to the bathroom and stares at her reflection in the institutional mirror. Her dark eyes seem brighter, more intense. Her skin has taken on a subtle luminescence that could be attributed to the fluorescent lighting but feels like something else entirely. When she smiles, testing, her teeth look sharper than she remembers. The rational part of her mind catalogs potential explanations. Stress, lack of sleep, the psychological aftermath of her encounter with genuine danger. But rationality feels increasingly fragile against the tide of changes washing through her system. Her body temperature runs higher now. Her appetite has shifted from careful portions to an almost carnivorous hunger that leaves her gnawing cold chicken from the bone like some feral thing. Most unsettling of all is the way her senses seem to be expanding beyond human parameters. She can track her principal's movement through the school by the distinctive click of her heels on linoleum floors 3 hallways away. The scent of individual students lingers in her classroom long after they've gone home, each child's unique fragrance as distinct as a fingerprint. When parents arrive for conferences, she knows their emotional states before they speak. The metallic tang of anxiety, the sour notes of frustration, the warm honey smell of genuine affection for their children. Changes accelerate as the week progresses. By Thursday, she has to grip her desk during lessons to keep her hands from shaking with energy that feels too big for her human frame to contain. Simple tasks like writing on the whiteboard require conscious effort to control her strength. She should see a doctor, she knows. Should demand blood tests and brain scans and all the rational medical interventions that might explain what's happening to her body. Instead, she finds herself researching wolves on her laptop late into the night, reading about pack dynamics and territorial behavior with the obsession of someone seeking answers to questions she can't quite articulate. The information she finds both fascinates and terrifies her. Wolves mate for life, forming bonds that transcend simple attraction or convenience. They communicate through sense and subtle body language that convey complex emotional states. Their social structure revolves around dominance and submission, protection and belonging, concepts that resonate in her bones with recognition she doesn't understand. Friday evening arrives with the inevitability of fate, bringing with it the familiar restlessness that has driven her to the forest every night since her encounter with Golden Eyes. But tonight feels different, charged with significance she can taste on the autumn air. As she laces up her running shoes, her hands tremble with anticipation that has nothing to do with exercise and everything to do with the certainty that something waits for her among the trees. Her reflection in the hallway mirror catches her attention as she heads for the door. For just a moment, in the shifting shadows of evening light, her eyes flash with an amber gleam that has nothing to do with the lamplight behind her. She should be afraid of what she's becoming, what forces have been set in motion by a single moment of eye contact with a creature that shouldn't exist. Instead, she smiles, and this time she doesn't question the sharpness of her teeth or the predatory satisfaction that curls through her chest like smoke. Whatever is happening to her, whatever price she might pay for venturing deeper into territory that belongs to things wilder than human imagination, feels like awakening rather than destruction. Tonight, she'll follow the dreams wherever they lead, even if it means discovering that the woman she's always been was just the prologue to something far more dangerous and infinitely more free. The bronze wind chimes hanging from Elena Moonwhisper's shop doorway sing a haunting melody as Arya pushes through the heavy oak door. The scent that greets her is intoxicating and overwhelming, sage and sandalwood, ancient leather, and something wilder that makes her newly sensitive nose twitch with recognition. Crystals catch the afternoon light from every surface, casting rainbow fragments across walls lined with books that look older than the town itself. Moonwhisper's mystical emporium sits wedged between the hardware store and the town's only cafe, its weathered sign making it easy to overlook unless you're specifically seeking what it offers. Arya has passed this shop hundreds of times in her 3 years living in Crescent Falls, never once feeling compelled to enter. Today, however, she finds herself drawn across the threshold by forces she can't name. The woman behind the counter looks up from the leather-bound tome she's been reading, and Arya's breath catches in her throat. Elena Moonwhisper appears to be in her 70s, with silver hair braided with small bones and feathers that click softly when she moves. But her eyes are ageless, pale gray like storm clouds, and when they fix on Arya, she feels exposed down to her soul. "You're earlier than I expected," Elena says, her voice carrying the hint of an accent Arya can't place. "Though I suppose the awakening is accelerating faster than usual. They always do when the bond is particularly strong." The words hit Arya like ice water, confirming fears she hasn't dared voice even to herself. "I don't know what you're talking about," she manages, but the lie tastes bitter on her tongue. Elena's smile is knowing and not entirely kind. "Child, you reek of mate bond. The scent is so strong I'm surprised every supernatural creature within 50 miles hasn't come sniffing around your door." She closes her book with a soft thud. "Tell me, how long since you first encountered your alpha?" "My what?" Arya's voice cracks on the question, though her racing heart suggests her body recognizes the term even if her mind rejects it. "The shifter who's been stalking your dreams," Elena says with maddening calm. "The wolf whose scent you carry on your skin like a brand. The alpha whose proximity is triggering your awakening whether you understand what's happening or not." The shop seems to tilt around Arya as Elena's words strip away the last of her desperate rationalizations. She grips the edge of the counter, her knuckles white against the dark wood. "That's impossible. I met a wolf in the forest, that's all. A regular wolf. There's no such thing as shifters." Elena's laughter is like silver bells touched with ice. "Oh, sweet child. The changes in your scent, the heightened senses, the dreams that feel more real than waking life, these are not symptoms of stress or imagination. They are the signs of a human being claimed by forces older than civilization itself." She moves around the counter with surprising grace, approaching Arya like one might approach a wounded animal. "You're experiencing what we call a mate awakening. It's rare, happening perhaps once every few generations when a human and a shifter form a true bond. Your alpha's proximity has triggered an ancient magic that's trying to transform you into something that can survive being claimed by an apex predator. The word claimed sends heat spiraling through Arya's body, followed immediately by a wave of revulsion at her own response. I'm not anyone's property, she says, but the protest sounds weak even to her own ears. Property? Elena tilts her head. Is that what you think this is about? Child, you understand nothing of what's happening to you. She moves to a shelf lined with bottles containing substances Arya doesn't want to identify. A true mate bond isn't ownership. It's recognition. Two souls finding their perfect complement. Problem is that shifter alphas are possessive, territorial, and view their mates as something to be protected and controlled at all costs. She selects a small silver pendant from a display case. Your alpha will not be content to admire you from a distance much longer. The mate bond creates an obsession that grows stronger with each passing day. Soon, watching you from the shadows won't be enough. He'll need to touch you, claim you, make you his in every way that matters to his kind. Arya's skin burns as if Elena's words are prophecy rather than warning. The dreams, the phantom touches that feel more real than her waking life, the certainty that something waits for her in the forest each night, all of it suddenly makes terrible sense. What happens to me? She whispers, her voice barely audible above the shop's ambient music. If this mate awakening continues, what do I become? Elena's expression softens marginally. That depends on several factors. If your alpha claims you properly, completes the bond through bite and blood and the full ritual of mating, you'll transform completely. Human consciousness preserved but enhanced with shifter strength, speed, and senses. You'll become something new, something that bridges both worlds. She pauses, letting the weight of possibility settle between them. But if the bond is forced, if you resist, or if he loses control during the claiming process, the transformation can destroy your human mind. You'd become a shifter in body but lose everything that makes you who you are. And if the bond is never completed, if you try to fight what's already begun, the awakening will tear you apart from the inside. The pendant feels cold against Arya's palm when Elena presses it into her hands. This will mask your scent temporarily, hide you from supernatural senses for a few days at most. It's not a solution, child. It's simply time to make a choice. What choice? Arya stares down at the silver disc, its surface engraved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. It sounds like I don't have any options. Oh, but you do. Elena returns to her position behind the counter. You can run. Leave Crescent Falls, put as much distance as possible between yourself and your alpha. The mate bond weakens with distance, though it never breaks entirely. You might be able to live a normal human life, though you'll always feel the pull of what you've left behind. The thought of fleeing makes Arya's chest tight with panic. But the alternative, surrendering to forces she doesn't understand, allowing herself to be claimed by a creature whose intentions remain a mystery, feels equally impossible. Or, she prompts, sensing there are more options Elena hasn't shared. Or you can embrace what's happening to you, Elena says simply. Meet your alpha on your own terms. Learn about his world, his pack, the laws and customs that govern supernatural society. Make an informed choice about whether you want to complete the bond or find a way to end it safely. She leans forward, her pale eyes boring into areas with uncomfortable intensity. But understand this, whatever choice you make must be made soon. The awakening has a momentum of its own, and once it reaches a certain point, the decision will be taken from you entirely. The pendant grows warm against Arya's skin as she slips the chain over her head, tucking the silver disc beneath her shirt where it rests against her racing heart. For the first time in days, the restless energy coursing through her veins settles to a manageable hum. The relief is so profound she nearly weeps. How long do I have? She asks, though she's not sure she wants to know the answer. With that pendant? Perhaps a week, maybe less. The magic is old but not absolute. Your bond is particularly strong, stronger than any I've encountered in my lifetime. It will burn through the protective charm faster than normal. Elena moves to her cash register, an antique brass contraption that looks like it belongs in a museum. That will be $50, child. And before you ask, no, I don't accept payment plans for matters of supernatural life and death. Arya fumbles for her wallet, her hands still trembling from the revelations that have upended everything she thought she knew about reality. As she counts out bills, another question occurs to her. You keep calling him my alpha. How do you know he's an alpha specifically? Elena's smile is enigmatic. Because only an alpha's claim would trigger an awakening this powerful in a human. Lesser wolves might form attachments, even obsessions, but they lack the spiritual authority to begin a true transformation. Your wolf isn't just any shifter, child. He's a leader, probably of a significant pack. That makes your situation both more dangerous and more promising. More dangerous how? Alphas don't share. They don't compromise. When they want something, they take it, consequences be damned. If he's decided you belong to him, he won't simply let you walk away. He'll come for you, and when he does, he'll expect complete surrender. The words send a shiver of fear and unwanted excitement through Arya's body. She thinks of those golden eyes watching her from the shadows, the predatory grace with which he moved, the way every instinct in her body had recognized him as something infinitely more dangerous than a simple wolf. And more promising? An alpha's protection is absolute. His resources are vast. If you choose to accept the bond, you would become the most protected woman in the Pacific Northwest. Luna of a pack, with power and influence that extends far beyond human understanding. But more than that, Elena's voice softens, an alpha's love, when freely given, is a force of nature. They are capable of devotion that would put human poets to shame. Arya pockets her change, her mind reeling from the impossible choice she's been presented with. Run from everything she's ever known to live a life of looking over her shoulder, or surrender to a creature she doesn't understand in hopes that fairy tale endings exist in the real world. There's something else you should know, Elena says as Arya turns to leave. Your alpha, he's not the only supernatural being who will be able to sense what's happening to you. The awakening creates ripples in the supernatural community. Other wolves, other predators, they'll be drawn to investigate. That pendant will hide you from most of them, but not all. Be very careful who you trust in the coming days. The afternoon sun feels harsh against Arya's eyes as she steps out of the mystical shop, the normal world seeming pale and insubstantial after Elena's revelations. She walks through downtown Crescent Falls in a daze, seeing her quiet little town through new eyes. How many secrets hide behind these familiar storefronts? How many supernatural beings move among the unsuspecting human population? That night, Arya lies in bed with the silver pendant burning against her chest like a brand. For the first time in weeks, the restless energy that usually drives her to the forest has been muted to a whisper. The dreams, when they come, are different too, distant and fragmented, as if she's viewing them through frosted glass. But even dulled by Elena's charm, she can feel him out there. Waiting. Searching. The wolf who has claimed her heart and soul without her permission, whose very existence has turned her ordered life into chaos. The next morning brings unexpected visitors to her classroom. Principal Martinez introduces 2 new students, transfer siblings from Seattle whose father has taken a job with the Forest Service. Jake and Mia Silverton seem normal enough at first glance, but something about them sets Arya's enhanced senses on edge. It's their scent that gives them away. Underneath the typical adolescent mix of body spray and hormones lies something wilder, more primal. When Jake shakes her hand in greeting, his grip is too strong for a 12-year-old, his eyes too knowing. Mia, barely 10, watches Arya with the unblinking intensity of a predator evaluating prey. We're so excited to be here, Jake says with a smile that reveals teeth just slightly too sharp. Dad says the mountains around Crescent Falls are perfect for family activities. The words carry undertones that make Arya's blood run cold. These aren't ordinary children. They're shifter cubs, and if Elena's warnings are true, they're here because of her awakening. Throughout the day, the Silverton siblings display behavior that would seem merely unusual to human observers but sets every alarm bell in Arya's supernatural awareness ringing. They move with fluid grace that speaks of muscles more powerful than their small frames suggest. Their attention remains fixed on her with laser focus, tracking her every movement, cataloging her reactions. During recess, she overhears Jake whispering to his sister in what sounds like a mixture of English and something else, a language of growls and subtle vocalizations that make her skin prickle with recognition. "The scent is muted," he says, glancing toward where Arya supervises the playground. "But it's definitely her." Dad was right. The stories about a human awakening weren't just rumors. "Should we report back?" Mia asks, her childish voice at odds with the adult calculation in her pale eyes. "Not yet. We need to confirm the source. If there really is an unmated alpha involved." Jake trails off, but the implications hang heavy in the air between them. Arya pretends not to notice their scrutiny, but her heart hammers against her ribs as the reality of her situation crystallizes. The supernatural world knows about her awakening. Wolves from other packs are already investigating, drawn by forces she doesn't understand. Elena's pendant might hide her scent, but it can't make her invisible to those actively hunting for signs of change. That evening, she finds herself pacing her small apartment like a caged animal, Elena's words echoing in her mind. Other predators will be drawn to investigate. She'd assumed that meant mysterious figures skulking in shadows, not children enrolled in her class with forged documents and innocent smiles. The pendant grows warm against her chest as evening deepens, and she realizes with growing alarm that its protective properties are already beginning to fade. Her enhanced senses, muted for less than 24 hours, start creeping back with increasing intensity. She can hear her neighbors' conversations through walls that should muffle sound, smell the individual scents of every person who has walked past her building in the last hour. And underneath all the human odors, threading through the night air like a promise and a threat, comes the wild masculine scent that has haunted her dreams. He's out there, closer than before, his presence pressing against the edges of her consciousness like a storm front moving in. The knowledge should send her fleeing, should have her throwing belongings into a suitcase and racing for the highway that leads away from Crescent Falls. Instead, it fills her with anticipation that borders on desperation. The pendant's protection is failing, and soon she'll be exposed to whatever forces are gathering in the darkness beyond her windows. She thinks of Jake Silverton's knowing smile, of Elena's warnings about the dangerous politics of the supernatural world, of the impossible choice between flight and surrender that grows more urgent with each passing hour. Tomorrow, she'll have to decide whether to run towards safety or embrace the dangerous unknown that calls to her from the forest depths. But tonight, as the silver pendant's power wanes and her connection to the mysterious alpha strengthens, she allows herself to remember golden eyes watching her from moonlit shadows and dreams of surrender that taste like freedom. Side, something howls in the distance and Arya's pulse quickens in response. Whether it's a call, a warning, or a promise, she can't say. But deep in her bones, she knows her time for choosing is almost over. Pendant lies cold and lifeless against her chest by morning, its protective magic completely exhausted. Arya stares at herself in the bathroom mirror, watching her eyes flash amber in the fluorescent light, and knows that whatever happens next will determine not just her future, but her very identity. The wild is calling, and she's no longer strong enough to resist its pull. Beneath her shirt where it rests against her racing heart. For the first time in days, the restless energy coursing through her veins settles to a manageable hum. The relief is so profound she nearly weeps. "How long do I have?" she asks, though she's not sure she wants to know the answer. With that pendant? Perhaps a week, maybe less. The magic is old but not absolute. Your bond is particularly strong, stronger than any I've encountered in my lifetime. It will burn through the protective charm faster than normal. Elena moves to her cash register, an antique brass contraption that looks like it belongs in a museum. "That will be $50, child." And before you ask, no, I don't accept payment plans for matters of supernatural life and death. Arya fumbles for her wallet, her hands still trembling from the revelations that have upended everything she thought she knew about reality. As she counts out bills, another question occurs to her. You keep calling him my alpha. How do you know he's an alpha specifically? Elena's smile is enigmatic. Because only an alpha's claim would trigger an awakening this powerful in a human. Lesser wolves might form attachments, even obsessions, but they lack the spiritual authority to begin a true transformation. Your wolf isn't just any shifter, child. He's a leader, probably of a significant pack. That makes your situation both more dangerous and more promising. More dangerous how? Alphas don't share. They don't compromise. When they want something, they take it, consequences be damned. If he's decided you belong to him, he won't simply let you walk away. He'll come for you, and when he does, he'll expect complete surrender. The words send a shiver of fear and unwanted excitement through Arya's body. She thinks of those golden eyes watching her from the shadows, the predatory grace with which he moved, the way every instinct in her body had recognized him as something infinitely more dangerous than a simple wolf. And more promising? An alpha's protection is absolute. His resources are vast. If you choose to accept the bond, you would become the most protected woman in the Pacific Northwest. Luna of a pack, with power and influence that extends far beyond human understanding. But more than that, Elena's voice softens, an alpha's love, when freely given, is a force of nature. They are capable of devotion that would put human poets to shame. Arya pockets her change, her mind reeling from the impossible choice she's been presented with. Run from everything she's ever known to live a life of looking over her shoulder, or surrender to a creature she doesn't understand in hopes that fairy tale endings exist in the real world. There's something else you should know, Elena says as Arya turns to leave. Your alpha, he's not the only supernatural being who will be able to sense what's happening to you. The awakening creates ripples in the supernatural community. Other wolves, other predators, they'll be drawn to investigate. That pendant will hide you from most of them, but not all. Be very careful who you trust in the coming days. The afternoon sun feels harsh against Arya's eyes as she steps out of the mystical shop, the normal world seeming pale and insubstantial after Elena's revelations. She walks through downtown Crescent Falls in a daze, seeing her quiet little town through new eyes. How many secrets hide behind these familiar storefronts? How many supernatural beings move among the unsuspecting human population? That night, Arya lies in bed with the silver pendant burning against her chest like a brand. For the first time in weeks, the restless energy that usually drives her to the forest has been muted to a whisper. The dreams, when they come, are different too, distant and fragmented, as if she's viewing them through frosted glass. But even dulled by Elena's charm, she can feel him out there. Waiting. Searching. The wolf who has claimed her heart and soul without her permission, whose very existence has turned her ordered life into chaos. Tomorrow, she knows, she'll have to make a choice that will determine not just her future, but her very identity. Question is whether she has the courage to choose freedom over safety, the unknown over the familiar, the wild calling of her awakening nature over the comfortable prison of her human life. Sleep finally takes her in the deep hours before dawn, and for once, her dreams are her own.